Hello? Yeah. Okay. Hi. Yeah, I'm very happy to present this research, which is called Thumb in Motion, Evaluating Thumb-to-Ring Microgestures for Athletic Activity. I'm presenting this work on behalf of the Augmented Human Lab, which, by the way, moved from Singapore this year to the Auckland Bioengineering Institute in New Zealand. Yeah, my name is Dennis, and it's actually my first time submitting to a SUI conference, and yeah, so far I really like it. Apparently my interpretation of spatial interaction seems to be a little bit different from what most people here presented at SUI. In this work, we focus on improving spatial interaction with fitness trackers during spatial activity. Hereby, we mainly focus on athletic activities such as running, so no VR. There are typical body movements at which we found current activity trackers to be located at. For instance, smart insoles that collect your steps and calculate your gait pattern. We can find chest bands to measure your vital signs, such as your pulse, and headsets to listen to your favorite music while working out, and many more, of course. Most of these fitness trackers are usually paired with your smartphone or your smartwatch. However, interaction with a smartwatch or a smartphone is usually bimanual and requires visual attention. As a resulting problem when performing athletic activity is that the athlete's gait pattern is, and also the pace, is significantly changed in the moment of the interaction with such device, which is actually unwanted. And we think that unimanual interaction should provide a benefit in a running scenario, and thus we conducted this research. Apparently, we're not the first guys. Why is it actually empty? Anyways, we think that a unimanual interaction, thumb to index interaction, might be an interaction concept. And there's of course a lot of work out there. For example, in this research, Chan et al. Conducted an elicitation study on single hand microgestures, and they found out that 12 out of 16 gestures used the thumb as the main interaction finger. Hung et al. Presented DigiSpace, and here it has been found that using taps, like tapping and stroking from your thumb to the dominant index finger or to also the middle finger is to be perceived most comfortable. C et al. Also investigated thumb to finger tapping with two different physical conditions, such as sitting and walking. However, they could not see any effect in performance difference, maybe due to the IMU they used and to the sensor noise. Less noisy could be using a camera to detect those gestures, which can be mounted to the upper body. This project you probably know very well. It's called Pinch Watch, and they use a RGB camera mounted to the chest. Also, a camera has been mounted to a ring interface, such as demonstrated in Cyclops ring. Very recently, Google Soli plus a lead motion was also used in a wearable setup. However, these researchers they just use this technology while standing still and not in motion. Another related project is ring traction. It proposed thumb to index interaction using horizontal and vertical swipes, as well as taps and rotations for parallel tasking. They demonstrate scrolling, zooming, and panning with these microgestures. Another ring is touch ring, in which the authors used printed electrodes and the capacitive sensing on a ring, and this is also worn on the index finger and enables for multi-touch gestures on the index finger. There's way more research out there which I cannot show today. For example, you may have heard of Magic Finger, Finger Ping, recently published, Earring, Light Ring, etc. However, all these projects have three commonalities. They demonstrated prototypes which are rather cumbersome and not very suitable for an evaluation under high external motion. The thumb to index gestures have not been evaluated while performing spatial activity, in particular athletic activity, such as while running. And it remains unknown which thumb to index gestures are most simple to use in a real scenario. Yeah, to evaluate the state of the art to the next level, we actually developed a ring prototype, which is basically a 3D printed finger ring and a flexible PCB, which is wrapped around it. Because users demonstrate different thicknesses of their finger, we printed 5 adapters, so to say, and we can actually place it inside the ring so to ensure an optimal fit. The ring has a tiny microcontroller communicating with an Intel Edison that is worn at the wrist like a smartwatch. Our 3D printed wristwatch prototype mimicked a Samsung Gear smartwatch. Yeah, we in fact also used the smartwatch armbands. To determine a suitable gesture set, we first conducted a pilot study. And in this pilot study, we handed out different rings to the participant and asked them to creatively perform any kind of one-handed finger gestures they can come up with. Based on our observations, wearing the ring on the index finger resulted in a higher number of gestures. While a variety of zigzag and circular gestures have been performed, all participants suggested rather simple thumb to index gestures, which were swipe up, swipe down, swipe left, swipe right, and the simple thumb tap. Here we can see the worn prototype and the gestures being performed. Yeah. We selected these rather simple gestures because they can be quickly executed, as they appear very natural to the participants. So in this paper, we used these 5 input gestures for further evaluation. In a first study, we investigated the performance of these 5 thumb to index microgestures at different speeds, at different levels of physical engagement, which are standing, walking, and running. This has not been done in research so far. We invited 12 participants and asked them to perform these microgestures using our developed ring prototype. The participants wore all a headset, which gave them audio instructions on what gesture to execute. Yeah, believe it or not, but we actually went down to a sports ground and conducted our study outdoors to really mimic a realistic scenario as close as possible, at least. Yeah, so the study was, by the way, conducted in Singapore, and temperatures that they were around 30 degrees, and thus, yeah, we had to fight against the increased accumulation of sweat at the fingers, which is a major problem for gesture recognition. I'll talk about this later. Okay, let's have a look at the results of this first study. Completion time. Apparently, the simple tapping gesture is executable shortest with 165 milliseconds only. The swipe down gesture took the longest time with 221 milliseconds on average. However, no gesture was performed significantly quicker or slower when standing, walking, or running, which is actually good news. The ease of use. We also asked the participants to rate some certain aspects on a 5-point Likert scale. In this graph, we can see the results, and we can see that executing gestures while standing is perceived to be easier than running. Moreover, we can also see another significance. It's here the swipe right gesture. It is perceived to be more difficult than tapping in the condition of running. Perceived precision. In general, we can say that the physical activity level does not significantly change the perceived precision on the accuracy of the performed gesture. However, there's again one outlier. We found out that there's a reduction of the perceived precision for the swipe right gesture again while running. We also conducted a NASA TLX. And yeah, again, while running, we found that performing thumb to index microgestures to create a higher physical demand, a higher failure in performance, and a greater effort. The task load when performing the thumb to index microgestures do not significantly differ when solely comparing standing and walking. So that's the same, so to say. In terms of qualitative feedback, users confirmed that the swipe right gesture seems to be more complicated to be performed than other gestures. This is, as you have seen, also confirmed by the qualitative data. However, more than 58% of all participants favored the swipe up and the swipe down gesture. In terms of applications, 10 participants out of 12 suggested both controlling a music player as well as controlling a fitness tracking app may be a good scenario to use these gestures with. Other scenarios were also mentioned, such as like phone control, navigation, gaming control, even authentication. Yeah, in study 2, we developed a gesture classifier based on the previously collected raw data from the first study. Our selected classifier was a support vector machine. The confusion matrix can be seen here. Yeah, the tab is pretty low because during running, the thumb was sometimes a bit also sliding down. And also the swipe right gesture, our problem gesture, was executed in different styles as we found out, and thus created a lot of confusion for our classifier. Yeah, as I mentioned before, during athletic activity at 30 degrees, the accumulated sweat and also the humidity was also very high that day, was considerably impacting our recognition, and that's why it's a little bit low. The user could control, in study 2, 3 different applications, which are a lap timer, a distance counter, and a music player. Oh. Okay, there was a small demo of the music control. So here we can now see the study setup. This is condition 1, in which the user sets a lap timer and changes. So you can see he's visually focusing. And this is like the second or the third condition. We use the ring for interaction. The user is not visually focusing. Yeah, we compared actually 3 conditions. Condition 1 is the SO condition, the smartwatch original condition. Here we use a conventional Garmin sports watch enabling for a bimanual interaction on the screen. So no modification at all. The second condition, the SA, the smartwatch audio condition, is we blacked out the screen on the Garmin sports watch, and we developed an audio feedback menu, so the user needed to hear lap timer, and then he would swipe it or tap on the watch to select it. And in the third condition, we used the same audio menu, but the user was enabled to use the ring and to do the same gestures on the ring. Yeah, in our second study, we recruited 18 healthy subjects who had to run a distance of 800 meters, while they had to interact with the system every 100 meters. It was indicated on the track. Let's have a look at the results. For each condition, we conducted a standard usability questionnaire, the SUS. The overall or SUS score for each condition is displayed here. Following the general interpretation of the SUS, it allows us to comment that only the third condition, the ring condition, is considered as being usable in a running scenario. This is because the authors of the SUS once defined a system should exceed the points of 68, and then you can say a system is somehow usable. Having a closer look at the attribute SDS now, it becomes obvious that the users tend to prefer using condition T, the ring condition, more frequently, while they have a higher confidence in the system. Also, the ring tends to be perceived as less complex, easier to use, and less cumbersome than the smartwatch conditions. Still, the ring prototype was rated to have a higher inconsistency, which is also due to the lower gesture recognition. The accuracy basically, I told you before, was a little bit lower. However, none of the described effects are actually statistically different with our sample size of 18 subjects. Yeah, furthermore, we asked the participants to rate 11 more questions, such as if the system is satisfying, helpful, mentally stimulating, attractive, etc. And we found here 2 significances. Although the score 3.6 on the left graph is not very high, the ring prototype was still perceived to be a little bit more frustrating than the smartwatches. This is because the recognition accuracy of our ring gesture recognizer was comparably lower than the ones from a commercial smartwatch. These gesture recognizer on smartwatches, they're pretty sophisticated. However, using this system as fun was rated still to be slightly higher with the ring in comparison to both smartwatch conditions. Qualitative feedback. The majority of all users prefer the thumb to index interaction, which was also underpinned with many quotes such as, "It's easier to use while running," or "It does not interfere with my running speed and requires very little motion to use." Still, the main drawback by using an audio menu is that the user requires somehow to imagine this interface in his inner eye. So using audio menus, they cannot be very complex without creating an increased cognitive load. Now I would like to summarize all findings of these research projects. So the physical activity level does not heavily affect the execution style of thumb to index gestures. Gesture completion time remains the same. And the subjectively perceived level of precision does also not differ with increasing running speed, except the swipe right gesture. The swipe right gesture is perceived to be more complicated than other gestures when running. Generally, users perceived executing thumb to index gestures to be easier and to be less physically demanding while standing, in contrast to running. The actual accuracy of executing gesture is still constant across all three activities. And qualitative feedback shows the tap as well as the swipe left and the swipe down gesture to be preferred. The audio feedback was perceived to be appropriate while running. However, visual UIs are easier to understand, as also stated by the participants. For manipulating more complex information interfaces, using thumb to index micro gestures may not be the very best choice, at least not the gestures the users proposed and we evaluated. Overusing the ring interface was more frustrating due to the gesture classifier inaccuracies. The user still rated it to be more usable in a running scenario. And finally, the majority of all participants also preferred the thumb to index interaction when performing athletic activities such as running. And I'm already at the end of my talk. Thank you very much for your attention, and I think you have plenty of time for questions.
Yes. Good. So, hi, thank you for your talk. Did you run a proper agreement score analysis for your elicitation study?
A consent form agreement?
Yeah, are you familiar with the agreement score analysis and for guessability studies?
So the very first study, of course, we handed out a consent form. I'm not so sure if this addressed your questions. It was a very open-ended questionnaire.
Right.
So we just asked them to randomly come up with things, and there was no really structured. It was very informal, and we were just observing what they did, and it was no strict order. It was very open.
Mm-hmm. But I'm talking about the analysis after you have all the data.
No. There was no data. We did not analyze the data with statistical means for the pilot study where the users came up with the different gestures. No, we did not do this. It was very obvious. It was very obvious that all the users came up with all these 5 gestures. So we didn't.
Oh, okay.
And some gestures were not performed by others. For example, some people did circular gestures like this, and some other people never came up with these. And I think also, somehow you can analyze it, but we didn't do it now.
Did you observe any presence of Midas touch problem with your microgestures?
Not so sure.
Are you familiar with this problem when users activate some commands by mistake?
The false positives for the gesture recognizer?
Yes.
Of course there were false positives, around, I would say, 15%. That's actually, it's also reflected by the actual ratings in the end. So the user found it more frustrating because they wanted to select a menu point, but then actually they switched it to the next one. So there was still a problem. And building a stable gesture classifier with our prototype was really a tough challenge due to the environmental conditions.
Okay. Other questions?
Thanks. Great talk and great results. And actually, I have similar questions about. I'm got interested about the robustness of gestures. So, did you observe some participants activate some gestures unintentionally
Yeah, so I think
while running?
we had a few participants who were accidentally performing a tap because when they run, sometimes the index finger can accidentally touch the ring. This actually can happen. I guess we can encounter this while shortening the tapping time. Yeah, but we had this. There are true negatives we had. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have some more questions?
Thank you for the talk. It was pretty interesting. I've got one question. In the beginning, you said that people using smartwatches nowadays tend to get slower when they run. Did you also investigate this, or didn't I get it?
No, there was kind of common sense, and you can also find papers about this. So we did not run another analysis on this. But one of our authors also a kind of amateur runner. So, and this is kind of common knowledge that interacting and visually focusing on devices have an impact on your gait patterns. And you can also read it online. So, but we did not actually conduct another study on this since it's already common knowledge.
Okay, but did the participants slow down using your system?
We kind of observed it, but we didn't measure it.
Okay.
For our system, no, they actually did not slow down. But with the other conditions, the other two conditions, they slowed down. But we never took the time. We could have also taken round times, but we did not do this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, I have a last question. And you're using a ring because it's eye-free and should not disturb the user while running, but eye-free doesn't really mean attention-free, especially if your interface is a bit more complicated and the user should select something. So do you think it's better to use your interface with a couple of single gestures but a long sequence of steps to achieve something, or a smartwatch where you can just press the exact function you want? Or in which scenario can you elaborate?
Yeah. I'll answer this way. Depending on the complexity of your interface, if it becomes very complex, the user has created a higher cognitive demand, a higher cognitive load, and then even like a single hand microgesture could also create a slowing down and a change in gait because the user actively needs to remember the menu and then he thinks too much. So
yes, but that's the same for very simple commands. For example, volume up and down. You have to remember which exactly command this is and which exactly was recognized better than the other one, or how to perform it in the right way so that it's recognized.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of practice. The more you practice, the more you internalize it, and then the cognitive load is going to be decreased. Yeah, okay. So it's a matter of practice.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So let's thank our speaker again.